Thank you for joining us on Sunday Interview. I am your host, Gervasio Zulu. And today we look at TVET, Technical Education, Vocation, Entrepreneurship Training. The growth of the education sector has created wide options for anyone wishing to pursue further studies in their chosen careers. This partly is due to the liberalized economy, which has given an opening for various training opportunities. But with the various options, however, has come quality and education concerns, as well as funding challenges. Government has been working at addressing the issue of challenges in the area of funding and infrastructure by creating a Skills Development Fund. My guest this evening on Sunday Interview is Alex Simumba, Director, Department of Vocational and Educational Training at the Ministry of Higher Education. Sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Gervasio. Good evening, viewers.
We are looking at a very important sector, very big, wide, and yet small in perception and overshadowed by university education and primary and secondary education.
Thank you very much, Gervasio. It's not being overshadowed, but sometimes it's not always that he who beats the drum louder is the best beater. Our technical education, our vocational and entrepreneurship training can be backdated to the Bible times. Jesus Christ and the Father are very much related to vocational training. So when we don't beat the drum, it's not that we're not there, but perhaps maybe through this program, we beat the drum much louder and people can hear that TVET is extremely important in the national and socio-economic transformation.
I've referred to the massiveness of the sector itself. I want you to explain it. How big is TVET, the TVET sector?
TVET is extremely big. Of course, in other national economies, they refer to it as vocational education and training, VET. In others, they refer to it as technical and vocational training, TVT. But in our setup, in our socio-economic setup, we refer to it as technical education, vocational and entrepreneurship training, TVET, which is a sector encompassing both public and private TVET. Public TVET, we're looking at the colleges that span across the government ministries. Ministry of Higher Education itself, which has got almost 30 institutions. Then you've got those under, for example, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Community Development, Agriculture, etc., etc. Those also are classified as institutions under technical education and vocational training. But also we've got those under trusts and private. Trust, we're looking at some of those that are running across the country in various hands of private companies, the church, but also we've got private TVET being offered by colleges under private entrepreneurship. So individuals have formulated colleges to offer technical education and vocational training. So TVET is both public and private, but the most dominant one is that one of public TVET. Why? Because government institutions will always exist. For private TVET, individuals can decide to close or they can change the business ideas, not to be in training. As you know, training is a very expensive undertaking. So most of them do close and move on, but we as government will always provide technical education and vocational training, spanning from 70% of the colleges being across the main transport corridor, Chilabombo to Lusaka, and about 25 to 30% across the rural areas. So TVET is a large family, which is very important. But let me say it right from the beginning. All economies across the world that have transformed and are experiencing economic growth. It be China itself, we all know about China, we don't need to talk about it. Brazil, South Korea, India, Singapore, Vietnam, and many other economies. They have transformed purely because they have not left out the sector which is very important to industrialization, which is technical education and vocational training. If you are going to talk about people making tables, if you're going to talk about people making chairs, if you're going to talk about technicians repairing aircrafts, if you're going to talk about pharmacists, environmental technologies, instrumentation, rigging in the mines, there's no way you're going to leave out graduates who are coming from technical education and vocational training.
But very important, and you've explained it very well. But yeah. Zambia just did that, forgot and left this sector behind. There was a time, until even now, I think some sections of this group have almost collapsed. You don't get very seasoned professional plumbers.
Of course, we've grown as an economy from independence.
Most of these you get bricklayers, plumbers.
Yes.
You get them. They've learned the art from their fathers. Yes. Now you have foreign nationals invading our space because we lost it out. Yeah. We didn't train. We abandoned it. Yeah. How are we reclaiming that slot? Yeah,
we're reclaiming that as we go in the program. We'll get into more detail. But if you recall from the time when we had the Commission for Technical Education in the 60s, then we moved to DTVT then, and we moved now to the new dispensation where we've got the TVET as an authority regulating and checking standards of the TVET sector. But also we've got the ministries that I mentioned to you, but with the main ministry heading the policy and guidance, which is Ministry of Higher Education, where I'm director. You need to understand the socio-economic transformation of Zambia. It will relate you to technical education and vocational training. During the neoliberal economic and political transition in 1990, 91, and 93, you very much know that there were ripples in the economy which affected training, it be university, technical education, and many other areas. It is during that period that somehow we lost out the fabric, not just for trainees, but also for trainers. Okay? Now, that may be said as water under the bridge. We as government are building the fabric that is supposed to transform.
Colleges were almost taken over by other courses.
Yes.
Technical colleges had to start trading business, doing business courses.
Yeah, but it's very natural. They had to find natural instincts to survive. And consequently, they delved in programs that were not answering to the mission and reason for which they were created. But under the current dispensation, we've changed all colleges that were offering the initial programs which stuck to technical and engineering programs. Plumbing, automotive engineering, auto collision repair, bricklaying and plastering, carpentry and joinery, instrumentation, and all those programs that then, for example, were even being run under the Zambia Institute of Technology, ZIT. We've gone back to them. Of course, there is a new dispensation where some of the skills which people were learning from colleges, others because maybe they have felt they can't go into a college, like you have said, they have the on-job training. For example, you become an apprentice to your uncle or to your brother who carries with you when he's doing construction. Surely you learn something. An expert. Yeah, but no, you don't become an expert, and that's what we're discouraging.
These are the experts people are using. Very few have qualifications.
In fact, our advice to all those doing construction, let them stick to people that have gone to learn and acquired a proper skill of, if one says he's a bricklayer, as one would put it, surely you have got the reason to ask which college they went to or which training they received. Is it Lukasha? Is it Mansa? Is it Mongu, Chipata? But definitely, and that's the reason why we are seeing a lot of buildings that are different angles. Because in training, it's a philosophy of making you understand measurements, dimensions, angles, forces. That's why sometimes you are seeing people construct a building and the building collapses. Of course, we don't have a law that restricts that you cannot employ a particular builder to come and build at your construction site. But when you go to the formal construction, like these companies that are employing personnel to construct big sites like the malls, definitely their graduates have a background and their papers to present. But let's talk of those in the private system. Gervasio has a company where he wants to be building houses. To cut corners, you go and employ people that are not competent. Why? Because you want to pay them less.
Some may be competent. They've schooled themselves, but they lack a paper, a qualification. How are you helping such people?
We have under our system, under the Technical Education, Vocational and Industrialization Training Authority, TVETA, to what we call Recognition of Prior Learning, RPL. Those that want to be like documented, if you put it that way, that they possess a qualification, we provide what we call the Skills Award. I wish to mention that when you look at the TVET sector and you place it in the National Qualification Framework, the National Qualification Framework runs from 1 to 10, 1 being grade 7 certificate level, 10 being doctoral level. We as a TVET sector occupy level 3, 4, 5, and 6. Level 3 being trade test level 1, 2, and 3. Those are the ones whom we are trying to get to the site, who have gone through a testing procedure, whether it is in domestic electrical installation or it is in construction. Level 6 being the highest, which is diploma level. All these graduates from the Northern Technical College, Nortec in Ndola, TVDC in Kitwe, Evelyn Horn College here in Lusaka. Most of them are at level 6, which is technologist level, diploma level. That is the way our qualification system is. And anyone who has gone to our colleges and has passed through the mill of training is definitely going to be classified within this strata, which is the one by law. You may need to know that we have a TVET Act of 1998, amended 2005, which stipulates how the TVET sector is going to operate. There's no college that is supposed to operate without registration. It's got to be registered with TVETA, but also it's got to have its assessors, examiners, including lecturers, accredited by TVETA. All this is the process of trying to answer that we shouldn't have quack graduates
in the sector. Of course, but this is a big problem. It's a big problem with higher education. We face it in universities being deregistered, schools being warned and cautioned. We have it in the TVET sector.
Yes, but you see,
is that a big problem?
We can't be perfect, but in the TVET sector, we are very strict. We are more strict in the TVET sector. Why? Because you cannot operate an institution, for example, without being registered. And if you don't meet the standards, TVETA in the Act has the right to come and register you and close you. And we have closed institutions before. Of course, we are in we may have a few desperate parents, a few desperate students who go to these colleges and want to learn. But the problem which there is this: they will not be able to write exams because exams are set by TVETA. Exams are regulated by TVETA. The certification and qualification assessment is the mandate of TVETA. Consequently, even if you go to Chimtengo Institute where you want to get this qualification, that's why some of them are finding it difficult to get jobs. Do you know why? It's because some of them are going to institutions that are not registered by law. It's a law that when you are going to run a TVET institution, it should be registered with TVETA.
How can parents and individuals trying to train?
They can consult through...
How can they protect themselves? I mean, this
the ignorance is not defense. All parents, guardians, companies who want to take their children, and I want to take this advantage of this opportunity to advise them. All parents, guardians, companies that want to take their children for training, they have an obligation to find out whether that institution is registered with TVETA and whether its personnel are accredited to be lecturers, to be teachers. It's a system. And when we accredit, we give certification. For example, when we certify you, we indicate the kind of courses you are going to teach. We also indicate whether you're an assessor or an examiner. So you not just pop up and begin to teach. But of course, the country is big. Some people just rush quickly to register their children, unsuspectingly. But in the end, these are the ones you find that when you go to get employment, they will ask you, did you go to an institution that is accredited? Even at higher education level, I think you have seen it. We have the Higher Education Authority, HEA. What is it responsible for? You have seen them advertised, for example, in the newspapers, which institutions don't qualify as universities. Even under TVETA, TVETA does that. TVETA is mandated to publish institutions that have been registered, but also to publish those that are deregistered and are not supposed to offer training. It's one way of regulating the sector. But of course, every sector will always have lacunas.
Now people will wonder, do you prosecute once you've deregistered?
Well, prosecution...
I can set up an institution.
We don't have...
The time you're closing, I'll have made my money, and the person that suffers...
Very unfortunate, very unfortunate, very unfortunate.
Parent out there.
We do not have punitive measures. We will close you. But of course, if you force, it becomes a legal issue. But more often, those that we have closed, they've gone under. I can assure you that training is not cheap, Gervasio. Training is not cheap. Most of them have fizzled out naturally. For example, if you're going to obtain lathe machines for training, how many private institutions are going to afford that? There are very few. Most of the training institutions that you are going to get around in the TVET sector that may be operating is those in soft programs, insurance, business, where you can put up 2 or 3 computers and employ 1 or 2 people to teach. But for us as government, we are on hardcore TVET, engineering and technical-related programs, which require well-qualified lecturers that you can pay. So you're going to find that some of the institutions I'm talking about, which we may say quack institutions, are those that are trading on soft TVET, insurance, business, purchasing and supply. Those are soft courses, but we can't stop them. But the only advice we can give is
they're also providing.
Yeah, they're providing a service, but an illegal service, which makes it very difficult for a young graduate to go and get employment. Because when you go to employment, to seek employment, they'll check where you went. That's why I've got so many kids who are not getting jobs also. It's not they're not trained. You see, they are going to institutions that are unregistered, institutions that are not factual, but we can't stop them, I'm suspecting. The advice we would give them is go to institutions that are registered, are accredited, so that even when you go up, whether you are seeking employment abroad or locally, I mean, you're going to... You
can get the job. Now, yeah. I want to move you to an area of concern. We seem not to be growing as much as we should in terms of industrialization. And you've said that artisan technologists are the best for industrialization.
Yeah.
Does this mean we've not invested enough?
Yes,
Does it mean TVET sector is not growing?
It's at the moment, if you look at the Zambian economy, as we have been talking about in the past, 70, 80, 85% of the Zambian economy is informal. And that's the most difficult growth sometimes to identify. Okay, why? It's because it's informal sector. Most of our graduates, given that the base for employment has gone down, and that's why we added the E in the TVET, entrepreneurship. If you look at those that, for example, here in Lusaka that are welding along Kalingalinga Road, in Garden, in Makeni, when you go to Kafue, all the towns across the country, most of them are doing private businesses. So let's stop looking at employment purely from a formal perspective. And I think that's one of the most difficult parts. I mean, you ask somebody, do you work? No, I don't have a job. But look, you are running a shop where you are welding tank stands. You are welding tanks. You are welding wrecks, hoists. But in Zambia, employment is only when you're in a formal job. Well, okay, you understand that maybe we've come from that white-collar system. But the issue at hand which says that the sector is growing. For example, government already is constructing colleges in Lundazi. We are constructing in Mwense. We have opened, I mean, we have constructed and opened in Mwense. We are constructing in Isoka. We are constructing in Porokoso, in Sesheke, in Kalabo. We are expanding Chipara Trades Training Institute. We are expanding Equipment Trades Training Institute. That shows that there's great demand for technical education and vocational training.
Are we training and throwing on the street, or training and these people we're training are coming up to do something?
We're not necessarily training and throwing on the streets because some of the students are self-sponsored, meaning that they are pursuing personal ambition. Some of them we providing, for example, we provide a TVET bursary. Very different, of course, from the bursary provided under the Higher Education Scholarship and Loans Board. It's meant for the vulnerable, skilled student who has shown, of course, vulnerability, but also exceptional appetite to pursue a particular program. We cannot say that we are training and throwing on the streets.
I was trying to question our curriculum. Your curriculum, is it good enough?
Yes, the curriculum.
Can somebody who leaves a TVET institution still stand on their own, or they have to wait to be employed?
Of course, we've turned a page on the Stone Age curriculum. We've moved. We've provided funds from both the ministry and the Skills Development Fund, the VETA, because one of its functions is to review curricula. Right now, we're in the process of reviewing all curricula. The standard is that you should review curricula within 3 years, which we are doing. We know that some of the curricula, we came with it from the federal system up to the 70s, 80s. And we all know, for example, that even if you take the welding field, it has changed. It's no longer the way we used to weld metals and systems before. So changing curricula is a process that we're going through. And this is changing curricula for almost all programs. For example, if you take secretarial and office management, the secretarial of office management in those days was about typing. But now you're talking of transcribing. You can speak into a machine, it can transcribe for you, meaning definitely you need to have graduates that speak to the new curricula. This is the same thing with the collision repair. There's an influx of several cars in Zambia. People are hitting into each other every day. Insurance companies are on the block. What do we need to do? The system of repairing cars those days is very different from the fiber that vehicle. Some of the vehicles are being made. The carburetor is an old system. We are talking of an EFI. We are talking of VVTI now. So, change of curricula has been inevitable. We're working on it so that it fits in the new economic system, and also we are part of the global setup. Yes, we have not reviewed all the curricula. But
you're in the process. I want you to look back and probably point at some of the achievements that have been scored in this sector. Like I said, it's been relatively quiet.
Yeah, several. There's been several. Perhaps, of course, there's a focus maybe on university education. Yes. But maybe for now,
because there are fewer riots in private institutions.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And we should commend the lecturers, the students across our institutions. We are some of the most peaceful institutions and well disciplined. Yes, we have had a few upheavals from the Evelyn Horn College. But you know, Evelyn Horn College has always been a hotbed and is centered in the capital of this country. So you'd expect a number of students to be very revolutionary. But generally...
When you look at the achievements generally, what would you cite?
The achievements are several. Okay, like I've already told you that government has embarked on construction of colleges across the country. What are we trying to respond to? We are trying to respond to increasing access to the people in the rural areas. Because one of the difficult parts has been that the rural areas have been left out. And through the able leadership of this government, like I've indicated already to you, we've constructed in those places I told you across Kalabo, Mwense. If you go to Mwense, for example, I think you could have seen it on ZNBC. We have put up a very splendid institution. And when you go there, you can see the people of Ruapola very happy. This is an addition to Mansa Trades Training Institute. And the same institution, we have equipped it with good furniture. This is both furniture for students, furniture for lecturers. We have built modern houses. We are equipping the workshops. Take, for example, we've been working with our partners. Of course, when you mention the word Chinese, everybody is, there's nothing wrong with working with China. It's a big economy. The government of the Republic of Zambia has been working with the Chinese government to ensure that we procure equipment for our colleges. This equipment is in automotive engineering, electrical engineering, also in terms of the new teaching paraphernalia. You know, modern teaching methods are different now. You use laptops, you use scanners, you use beamers, you move away from the chalk. All that is improving the pedagogical delivery, which makes teaching more modern and more appetizing. Further to that, we've sent a number of students for training. For example, under the Ministry of Higher Education, we've got a project called the Support to Science Technology Education Project, STEP, which government is co-funding with the Africa Development Bank. We've taken both university lecturers and lecturers from across our colleges for training to improve from some of them from diploma to bachelor's degree level, some of them from bachelor's degree level to master's level, and others to doctoral level. This is in the capacity for human resource development. But also we have been rehabilitating classrooms, lecture rooms. We've been doing roads, because these are very important if you're going to improve a learning environment, if you're going to improve access. So our successes are moving across workshops, classrooms, the learning environment.
So you would say successfully that you've managed to,
to
equip.
It's a trend.
They are well equipped.
We are on the way. We are on the way. We're still way behind, but I can assure you that what we are doing is very sufficient to see that there's growth. Even when a baby is born, it doesn't grow in one day. But if a baby is not growing, the parents should get worried.
So activity has not been growing for a long time?
No, it's growing. It's a baby. It's a baby. It's a bounce baby. It's growing. It's got tremendous potential for this country.
Had malnutrition at some point?
Oh, yes, it had malnutrition at some point. Yes, it had. Because there was a point when we came from, we had the multi-party elections in 1991. The next 7 years, the institutions were like orphans. They were like orphans. But later on, government realized, and you remember that was the period for commercialization, privatization, if you recall that period. About 98, government realized that TVET, we had made a mistake. And we came back. And from the time we came back, Our institutions are receiving government grants. Of course, I know that last year there was a bit of turbulence from the Treasury. You are aware of that, okay? The Treasury was burning a bit. But our institutions receive government grants. They receive payment for bursary. They receive infrastructure development. They receive even motor vehicle. We buy motor vehicles for them. We buy equipment for them. The hard part of it is the responsibility of the Minister of Higher Education. But they still mobilize resources through fees, like boarding fees, tuition fees. They still charge the fees, other than which we as ministry give them. So it's a baby growing.
Let's look at, of course, you've got achievements, you've got
yes,
successes, but of course, in running a big sector like this one, you've got challenges.
Yeah, big challenges.
What are the challenges you experience?
Some of the challenges that we have is that we still need to develop a strong teaching cadre of people that should teach. Because you know that most of the people that used to teach, like you indicated earlier on, have passed on, have moved on, or have changed sector, or have changed careers. So one area which we still have challenges, in any institution where you teach, you need somebody who is teaching a diploma holder should be a bachelor's degree holder. One teaching a bachelor's degree should be one with a master's degree. Just like one teaching a certificate holder should be a diploma holder or somewhere higher than that. Yes, we need to make the sector more attractive in terms of wages so that the most qualified people can come, can get attracted to it. Also, we need the...
So you're lacking in terms of lecturers?
Yeah, of course.
With a lot of this
of course, you see, the issue is that the same people we employ, we compete with the other sectors. And you know very well that people always gravitate where it's greener. So if you are less green, it's like you choosing to play for a local club in this country and choosing to play for a club in South Africa or choosing to play for a club in Europe. Definitely, you're going to go where it's a little bit greener. So even the lecturers, it's the same. Some of them move on to go and work maybe with the mines where they feel their paycheck is a little bit higher. So some of them retain. Some of them is passion. But also we've got issues of training equipment. Some of the training equipment in some of it is obsolete. You know that some of the equipment for training in various workshops in our TVET colleges were bought in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And buying training equipment, Gervasio, is extremely expensive. Extremely expensive. So it's one area that we need to improve. But also there are issues of conditions of service, which as we go by, we have increased our grants to a level which we can afford as government to give the institutions. All we need is to ensure that these grants are stable and flowing to the institutions. I think that's one of the challenges that we need to have. But also we should be able to pay the TVET bursary on time, which we are working on, to ensure that all the institutions, because we, for example, in this calendar year, we have about first-year students, about 6,000 first-year students across the country.
On bursary?
Yes, whom we need to pay for to a tune of about 50 million. We need to find that money and pay for them. This is the outside the returning students.
You overcommitted. Did you overcommit?
No, well, I mean, look, it shows the demand. It's not about overcommitting, Gervasio. It's an issue that we need to discuss as a nation. It shows there are people who want to learn. The restriction they're having is vulnerability. So myself as director, as an advisor to my PS, to my minister, I need to say this is the platform. We have got 6,000-7,000 students whose cost, when we calculate, comes to 50,000. This is besides the returning students. We have returning students. With some programs, if you take at a college like Nortec and Evelyn Horn, they go up to third year. So we have those that are returning, going to second year, third year. But also we've got the other colleges where they run 2-year programs. We have returning students whom we started sponsoring last year. That's a separate budget. It's also a challenge. So it's the reason why we have always asked for partners to come along to support us, because not every child is going to get into university. In fact, how many public universities do we have? Of course, now we can talk about private universities, but how many also quality private universities do we have? The public universities, Mulungushi, there are no bursaries there. We only have Copper Belt and the University of Zambia. But also, will every child get into university? The answer is, and that's why I've made a mistake. Money lies in TVET.
Yes. We need to change the culture.
Yes, yeah, we need to change
people's mindset.
You see, the people's mentality is wrong. The people who fly fighter jets are not degree holders or doctor holders. There are people who specialize in a skill to fly a MiG-29, a MiG-21, and they get decently paid. The people who fly the planes around will not flash a degree in your face, but they'll flash a qualification to fly a helicopter across the world, and they'll earn their money. But here, the thing we think, that's why today you've got
maybe
so
because
many
of the system,
Gervasio.
We've looked down on people.
Yes, it's true. We've looked down. The mentality on TVET is all. What did you do? Construction management. Oh, yeah, Dow.
Plumbing.
Plumbing. Oh, yeah. But do you know, look at the construction sector in Zambia. Extremely huge. It all depends on what are your management skills. And if it's
maybe
true.
the reward system is not that good.
No, it's an attitude. We need to change our mentality. Our mentality is wrong. Our mentality is wrong. Look at how many people are doing tiling in Lusaka, in their houses. Hundreds, thousands. But we want quick things. We want quick things. Make fritters in the morning, sell them in the afternoon. If they can't sell half the price, empty the tin. Education is not like that. In education, in a skill, you need to invest.
You need patience and investment. Let's look at investment. Let's move and look at the call of this interview. When we talk about investment, we're looking at the Skills Fund.
Yeah.
How does it work?
The skills development,
the biggest innovations, I guess, in the sector.
Exactly. The Skills Development Fund has history across the world. If you go to countries like Ghana, Namibia, Mauritius, name them across the country, South Africa, they have a certain rate that they have slapped on industry to contribute to TVET. In the past, it's only government that has been contributing to TVET. Yet all the graduates get absorbed by industry, consume them, but also government needs an initiative to mobilize resources to fund the TVET sector. So it is during the fiscal year of 2016 that Honorable Professor Luo, through her good leadership, sat down with us technocrats, can we introduce a levy? But this levy had been lying on the table for many years. But because of her good force of nature, in 2016, the government enacted Act number 46 of 2016, effective January 1, 2017, to create the Skills Development Levy Act 46, which culminated into the Skills Development Fund, the one we're calling SDF. One of the mechanisms behind it is that the private sector contributes 0.5% of their gross emoluments, with an exception of those in the public service or the local authority. The 0.5% is dependent on the payroll of a particular firm. But this firm should have an excess of 800,000 as its level of business. Any business in excess of returns of 800,000 shall contribute 0.5% of its gross emoluments.
That makes the fund very big.
Well, yeah,
that's a lot of money.
Yes,
and the sector should not struggle.
Yes, it is. But you see, you were talking about contracting and changes in employee levels. It will definitely affect how much money you have at the end. Because some companies close, some companies have got casual labor. During certain times, the numbers go up, the numbers go down. Definitely, that affects the amount of money. But definitely, yes, it is amount of money. But also, it's against also many huge problems. But that aside, this money is expected to be collected by the Zambia Revenue Authority, ZRA, as by law. ZRA is mandated to collect revenue. It collects this revenue and makes it available to the Treasury. And the Treasury makes this money available to us. But as I said earlier on, this only started 2 years ago. It's growing. The Skills Development Fund has...
How transparent is this fund?
Very transparent.
Of course, people would want to know.
Yes.
Are the figures published? Once you've collected,
yes,
do you publish what you've used the money on?
Well, we may not get online and publish them.
That's public money.
No, it is public money, but that's not the way you run public money, Gervasio.
Well, I mean, if you look at public institutions,
there are rules that
you've got annual reports that will tell you how much they collected, how much they spent. Yes, very transparent. Excessively,
and the Skills Development Fund is one of the most transparent funds, if not one of the most successful funds it's going to be. Why? Because
how come you don't publish?
No, it's only 2 years, Gervasio. It's only 2 years. We only started in 20. In fact, allow me to explain something. When the fund was created, we, the technocrats, sat down and developed guidelines. Because you're asking about transparency. We developed the Skills Development Manual, guidelines and rules that should govern the fund. Because the history of the levies in Zambia is not very pleasant if you ask most people. But we want to make it one of the most pleasant funds. And we had to develop guidelines. We've got documents in place. Then, I know it's a question maybe you would ask. We've got a fund committee constituting the private sector, civil society or non-state actors, and government. This fund committee, which oversees the implementation of the Skills Development Fund, includes the Zambia Federation of Employers, to which all employees belong. It includes the Zambia Chamber of Mines, to which the mining, as you know, the mining sector is big. We've got Mopani Mines, we've got Konkola, we've got First Quantum, we've got all these other mines. They are represented by the Chamber of Mines of the committee. We've got the Minister of Finance services of the committee. We've got the ZACSIMBA, the small and the medium business associations. They sit on the one.
So why is such a composition?
The composition, yes, yeah, the composition is meant to make it transparent, because if you look at the mining, they are contributing significantly. If you look at ZFE, Zambia Federation of Employers, they've got many employees belonging to it. If you go and look at ZACSIMBA, you are talking about the formal and informal sector. They ought to be there. Then you are talking about the government itself. So the committee is constituted in such a manner to ensure that there is transparency and there is accountability. And there's nothing to hide. Because when the Treasury has released the money, we've got a system through which we are disbursing the money. We're calling them windows.
Before you go to windows, one is bound to ask. I mean, government money moves so slowly, and we've had ZRAs involved. So collection from ZRA into government.
We have worked on those mechanisms.
The time you're dispersing, probably, does the money even reach you?
No, the money does reach us. Even in hell, there's order. Even in hell, there's order. In any system that you create, there ought to be order. Even in heaven, there's order. ZRA collects the money, makes it available to the Treasury. The Treasury has to account for it. After it accounts for it, it's brought to us. And we've got all figures of what you may call cash inflows and also cash outflows. So in terms of us, we are at the tail end. Our mandate as ministry is to implement the policies on technical education and vocational training. In terms of revenue collection, it's the mandate of ZRA and the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance has been making the resources available to us to execute. Of course, one of our objectives to make everything transparent is being on this program. That anyone who wants to check the books, how we're operating, how we're working, how we're spending, I think we have nothing to hide.
They can visit you.
Yeah, they can visit us and they can see me at the Ministry of Higher Education. I'm the chairperson from the Skills Development Fund. I've been mandated by the Minister of the PS to overlook that. And we're doing a good job. Those who can't see the good job, let them wear glasses.
You're proud of yourself?
Yeah, oh yeah, we are.
Let's look at the funding window.
Yes, yeah.
Let's look at the funding window. You were about to discuss the funding
Yes,
window.
any system, when you have got resources, you should have the vehicles, the instruments to use. We've got 4 windows in which we are disbursing the Skills Development Fund. We've got one window which is looking at the pre-employment. The pre-employment is the one you're talking of, the pre-service. Those who have not trained, who have not gone to work. The 6,000 I was telling you. That's a window that is meant to sponsor those particular students. The one you're calling bursary. That's one instrument of channeling the money from the Skills Development Fund, but also from government. We're still receiving money from government. We haven't stopped.
Still receiving grants, yes.
Then, we've got another window, that is employer-based window. The employer-based window is the one where a firm like Mopani Copper Mines can request for us to subsidize them. It can be First Quantum Mineral Operations, it can be Konkola Copper Mines, it can be any other contributing institution. But that institution ought to be registered with the VETA. Because we can't just get money and give anyhow. No, we can't do that. These are public funds. So if you're going to come as Gervasio Institute, we'll first ask you, are you registered? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the workshops? Do you have all those things? Then we'll grant you the money. There ought to be rules and regulations. You can't just get money which is public and give it anyhow. Those are the rules I'm talking about. That's one window. We have another window looking at human resource development, which also includes infrastructure development and systems development. Where can we be able to look? You are talking about curriculum development. We can't just channel money just like that. But also we've got another window that looks at the informal sector and the medium and micro enterprises. So it is through these 4 windows that we are channeling the Skills Development Fund. So if you come yourself with a particular issue, for example, you are Northern Technical College, you've got an issue. We ought to feed it on one of the windows. Windows, of course, we're using that term as technocrats, but you can say in which area does your issue fit for the layperson. Because if I say window, you're going to say, oh, window, you start thinking about curtains. Okay? But when I say the window, we're looking at which area do we place you? Is your issue infrastructure? Is your issue training? For example, if you say you want to train riggers, those who work in the mines, dealing with cabling, etc., etc., okay? They are going to say, fine, oh, we are training 50 people, and our cost is this. But remember that the envelope is limited. We are not there to meet the full cost of we cannot. But once the budget is presented, we present it, we discuss it, we evaluate it. And approve the payment. Now, do you have preferential treatment? Do you have quotas where you are going to identify a sector as lacking and channel more fund to that? Exactly, you're absolutely right. Because you know that the 7th National Development Plan and the aspirations of the 2030 vision, they've got certain areas where you were talking about lacking particular skills. We know, for example, that agriculture, tourism, construction, mining rank quite high in our country. For example, we have provided the resources. If I pick out Nyamaluma Wildlife School in the South Luangwa National Park. Why? Because we know that there they've got game rangers, they've got game scouts, they've got wildlife management programs. We have provided resources for them to ensure that you've got game scouts that are well trained, you've got all those personnel that revolve around game management, as an example. Just also remember that also we are there to create livelihood. The 7 NDPs talk about reducing poverty inequalities. You can only reduce poverty inequalities if you develop skills. If people have got skills, they will have meaningful earnings. So the investment of this fund has to be seen in a wider perspective. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a fund that is ensuring that many areas are covered which can help in transforming the national economy. Remember, we're talking about industrialization. We are not going to talk about industrialization if every time we're going to be importing skills from abroad. There are certain skills that we're developing across the country. Yes, some of them a little bit difficult. Why? Because the technology across the science and technology across the country is moving pretty fast. We never had mobile phones 27 or so years ago. But now, if you go around the town center, you find a lot of young people who are doing mobile repair. None of them has learnt it from a college. So you need to develop a curriculum for
yes,
that.
And train these people.
Exactly.
So which stakeholders have accessed the funds so far?
So far, the stakeholders that have accessed the funds include those from the power utility. Okay, for example, you know that Kafue Gorge is one institution that is involved in training the power sector, which is very important. Here we're using power, it's all from ZESCO. But also we have had the mines, they have accessed the funds for their training facilities.
But isn't it strange that when you mention these names, I know you're still going on.
Yes.
That some of the names that you're mentioning are these big firms that can afford without
without
your support.
No, it's not always. It's not always. I will take, for example, I'll give an example. If you look at the monies provided.
ZESCO is a big
no. I think you
mining firms are very big. They've got the money.
Exactly.
And they can fund themselves.
That's a very good question. What we've provided are subsidies. The mines are spending about $30 million on training. More than $30 million every year on training. Remember, you asked the question, what's the return on them?
What's the benefit?
The benefit is...
You get the levy, but what's the benefit?
Yes, but it's, look here. It's not like they give us, we give back. No. In fact, if you look at what they have contributed in relation to what we have given them, it's peanuts. It's peanuts. I don't want to go into figures here. I mean, I think it's not right for me. The issue is that we have a policy obligation. I don't want to call it moral, no? We have a policy obligation to make a retain. And that's the way the levy works, even in other countries. You place a small... We also want to appreciate them for contributing.
Are the smaller institutions benefiting?
Yes, they are. They are. For example, you may wish to know that through the Skills Development Fund, we'll be procuring equipment worth $10 million. This money from them. And this equipment is for all the institutions across the country. It's in the process of being procured. Before the end of this year, the equipment will have arrived, and that's just one phase. We have budgeted $10 million. Everything has been done. The equipment will start arriving before the end of this year. And all the institutions will receive across the country.
Maybe I should ask, who should access? Who's eligible to access the fund?
At the moment, we've restricted the accessibility and eligibility. Why? Because in economics, resources are always scarce. That's what we're taught. So when you're using them, you ought to be prudent and should have a criteria. At the moment, we've restricted it to public-run and community-run institutions. As we grow, we'll expand it. I told you the fund is just about 2 years. Now, because of its size, the more companies contribute, definitely will open the doors for more to gush in. At the moment, we've confined it to public institutions, but also to public organization institutions. Like, for example, you talk about... the
mines are private. You call them public?
No. We call it because they have a public connotation. If you go to Mopani Technical School in Mfrila, Mopani is even training children who are non-mining. That's the obligation. Can you see the obligation? If you go to even Kitwe Trade School, in Kitwe Trade School, or if you go to Kwambula in Solwezi, they are picking up children. If you go to Lumwana, if you go to Kalumbila, all those, they're bringing on kids. So we have an obligation as government to help train those, but by offering a subsidy. That subsidy, I know you're going to say, oh, you're giving to the rich again. No, it's not true. We've got a mechanism, and we've just started doing that. So you have institutions, for example, that are under faith-based. The UCZ, the Catholics, and others, they're running colleges across the country.
They're eligible too.
Very much eligible. For example, did you know that we run Choma Trades, Mawagari, and Kasia in conjunction with the Catholics? People don't know that. Those were Catholic institutions many years ago, but we run them as government. So institutions which are credible, they are registered with the VETA. They are eligible. They are eligible to apply to access the funds.
How is the fund accessed by stakeholders?
Well, I don't know how different it is from the previous question, but if you're going to talk about if
I'm a faith-based organization, I want to access the fund, what do I do?
Oh, beautiful. First, we deal with training. To training, you attach several angles. Equipment, pedagogical issues. These could be teaching materials. Also, there could be tuition. Some of them we advertise. If you are following our advice the previous couple of months, we advertise for the informal sector to apply to train students in the following areas. They apply. And we are already running it at the moment for the informal sector. You apply that you can offer, for example, you've got colleges under Ministry of Sports. You have seen them, the youth resource centers across the country. We have advertised before for both let me say for all, faith-based. When we say government, don't just talk of means of higher education. We also talk of means of youth and sports, defense. Talk of the correctional service. Under the fund, we are helping out in small portions for the correctional service. You remember that His Excellency the President Edgar Chagalungu talked about we need to redeem the prisoners. Let's not look at them as condemned. We as Skills Development Fund, we are providing resources. If you go to Mkobeko right now, go and ask them that, do you know the Skills Development Fund? They'll tell you they know the Skills Development Fund. So all these stakeholders, We do advertise in the newspapers. Those that let people should take time, not just to read the first page and the last page. Let them go inside and see adverts.
And check out the adverts. And check out the adverts. Fine. Now, I'll still get back to that question. I know you mentioned a huge number of people that are sitting on the committee.
Yes.
But I want to find out monitoring mechanisms to ensure the funds are used for the intended purpose.
Yes.
In place.
Yes, we have a robust monitoring mechanism that is run between the Ministry of Higher Education together with our authority, which is the VETA, to ensure that whatever we are doing is monitored. For example, through the Skills Development Fund, we have engaged the Zambia National Service at a very reasonable cost to do roads across 76 institutions across the country. They've done a tremendous job, and some of them have been shown even on this channel. Occasionally, trips to monitor and evaluate the performance have been they are taken. I mean, of course, we can't just pay money and not see what is being done. We have a mechanism to check if for example, ZNS charged the Skills Development Fund 1.4 million to do roads at Sesheke Trade Training Institute, or at Mongo Trade Training Institute, or at Mwense. We evaluate, we check, okay, fine, what are they doing? What works are they doing? They're going to make culverts, they're going to do compacting, they're going to do all those things, clearing. We are using it to make football pitches. We've got to check. Once we check, we certify, we are happy with the works that they've done as the way we arranged at the beginning. We acquit the works, and we look forward to the next. I think that's very, very important. In fact, that's what makes me proud with my team and with everybody whom we're working with. Anybody who wants to see our works and where the money has gone, they're free to come.
Mr. Simumba, thank you so much for your time.
Most appreciated. I can only appeal to the general public there that let's take our children to go and learn skills. Let them stop doing drugs. Let them stop wasting their time. Let them go to the many colleges we have across the country. Get some skill in collision repair, plumbing, automech, auto electrical.
They are short of space, I suppose.
Yes, they're short of space. The space is there. They are just wasting their time out there. Stop drinking and complaining about the government. The only thing you don't complain is about yourself. Go out there. Find a place to sponsor
Mr. Simumba, thank you so much. We seem to be running out
Great
of time.
pleasure. Thank you very
well,
much.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was Mr. Alex Simumba, Director, Department of Vocational Education Training at the Ministry of Higher Education. We'll be back next week sometime. Pleasant viewing.
Thank you.